I was halfway through my turkey sandwich when I saw him sitting on the curb outside the diner. Just another Tuesday lunch break in downtown Chicago. Nothing special. Except this guy. He looked different from the usual crowd that hung around State Street. His clothes were dirty, sure, but there was something about the way he held himself, like he was trying to disappear but couldn't quite manage it. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the fact that I'd been living paycheck to paycheck for so long that I knew what rock bottom looked like. Maybe it was because my own bank account had $17 in it until Friday. But I wrapped up the second half of my lunch, grabbed the apple I'd been saving for later, and walked outside. "Hey," I said, crouching down next to him. "You hungry?" He looked up at me with these incredible blue eyes, clear and sharp, not what I expected at all. For a second, he didn't move. Then he nodded, just once. I handed him the bag. "It's just turkey and Swiss. And the apple's a little bruised, but it's still good." "Thank you," he said, and his voice was soft but educated. Definitely not what I expected. "That's very kind." I shrugged. We've all been there, right? Except I was pretty much still there. Working double shifts at a call center that treated us like robots. Living in a studio apartment with a radiator that only worked when it felt like it. But he didn't need to know that. I stood up, brushed off my pants, and headed back inside to finish my shift. My stomach growled for the rest of the afternoon. But whatever. I'd eaten half. I'd survive. I didn't think about him again until the next day. I was walking out of the building after another soul-crushing 8 hours of telling people to turn their routers off and on again. And there it was. A black limousine. Not just any limo. One of those sleek, expensive ones that looked like it cost more than my entire yearly salary. It was parked right in front of the building, and people were stopping to stare. I would have walked right past it, except the back door opened, and the homeless man from yesterday stepped out. Except he wasn't homeless anymore. He was wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit, crisp white shirt, hair cleaned and styled. Same blue eyes, though. Same face. My brain short-circuited. I actually stopped walking and just stood there like an idiot with my mouth hanging open. "Hello again," he said, walking toward me with this small smile. "I was hoping I'd catch you. What? Words. I needed words. What's happening right now?" "My name is Robert Ashford," he said, extending his hand. I shook it automatically, still completely confused. "Yesterday, you gave me your lunch. Today, I'd like to return the favor. Would you join me for dinner?" I looked at him. At the limo. At the driver standing by the car in an actual uniform. Back at him. Is this real life right now? If you're thinking this sounds like the setup to a horror movie, trust me, so was I. But something in his expression made me curious enough to hear him out. Subscribe to find out why I said yes to getting in a stranger's limousine. Because what happened next changed everything. "I know this is strange," Robert said, and at least he had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "But I promise you, I'm not dangerous. I'm just someone who wanted to say thank you properly, and to talk to you about something important." "Talk to me about what?" I asked, still standing on the sidewalk like my feet had grown roots. "About kindness," he said simply, "and about a job opportunity." That got my attention. "A job opportunity? You don't even know my name." "Emily Martinez," he said, and my blood went cold. 27 years old. "You've worked at Tech Support Solutions for 3 years. You have a degree in social work from Illinois State, but you couldn't find a job in your field, so you've been stuck in customer service ever since. You're 2 months behind on your student loans, and your car has been making a noise that you can't afford to get checked out." I took a step back. "How the hell do you know all that?" "Because yesterday, after you gave me your lunch, I did some research. Your employee badge was visible. It wasn't hard to find out who you were." He held up his hands. "I know that sounds creepy, and I apologize. But please, just have dinner with me. 1 hour of your time. If you're uncomfortable at any point, I'll have my driver take you home immediately. No strings attached." Every instinct I had was screaming that this was insane. But there was something in his eyes. Something genuine. And honestly, what did I have to lose? My thrilling evening of instant ramen and reality TV? 1 hour, I said. And I'm texting my location to 3 different people. He smiled. I'd expect nothing less. The inside of the limo was exactly as ridiculous as I imagined. Leather seats, a mini bar, screens everywhere. I sat as close to the door as possible while Robert settled across from me. The driver pulled away from the curb smoothly, and we glided into Chicago traffic. "So," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt, "are you actually a billionaire doing some undercover boss thing? Or is this an elaborate true crime setup?" Robert laughed, and it was a real laugh. Warm and unexpected. "Neither. Well, I suppose I am quite wealthy, but yesterday wasn't about that. Yesterday, I was at the absolute lowest point of my life. Sitting on a curb in dirty clothes is the lowest point for a guy with a limousine." "The clothes were real," he said quietly. "The situation was real. I was sitting on that curb trying to decide if I wanted to go home at all." The humor drained out of the moment. I'd heard that tone before, recognized it. "Oh, my wife died 6 months ago," he said, looking out the window. "Cancer. I've spent the last half year going through the motions, running my company, attending meetings, pretending I'm fine. But I'm not fine. 2 days ago, I had a complete breakdown. I couldn't do it anymore. The pretending. So I left. I literally walked out of a board meeting, drove to a part of the city where no one knew me, and just sat there, trying to figure out what the point of any of it was." My throat tightened. "I'm so sorry. I sat on that curb for hours," he continued. "Hundreds of people walked by. Some ignored me. Some gave me disgusted looks. A few threw change at me like I was a problem to be solved with quarters. But you gave me your lunch. You crouched down and looked me in the eye like I was human, like I mattered. I didn't know what to say to that. It was just a sandwich." "It wasn't just a sandwich," Robert said, meeting my eyes. "It was the first genuine human kindness I'd experienced in 6 months. Everyone in my world wants something from me. My board wants profits. My remaining family wants to make sure I'm not about to torch the company. My late wife's parents want me to grieve the right way. But you wanted nothing. You just saw someone who needed help, and you helped." The limo pulled up to a restaurant I'd walked past a million times but never dreamed of entering. Le Bernardin, the kind of place where people made reservations months in advance. "I didn't say thank you yesterday," Robert said as the driver opened the door. "So let me say it now, properly. Thank you, Emily. You reminded me that there's still goodness in the world, and I'd like to discuss how you could help me bring more of it into mine." Have you ever had one of those moments where your whole life splits into before and after? Drop a comment below and tell me about yours, because I was living mine right then. Stepping out of a limousine in my discount store work clothes while valets tried not to stare. Dinner was surreal. We were seated at a private table, and Robert explained what he wanted. He ran Ashford Enterprises, a venture capital firm that invested in tech startups. But after his wife died, he'd been thinking about legacy, about what mattered. His wife had been a social worker, like I'd studied to be. She'd spent her life helping people, and he'd spent his making money. Now he wanted to do something that would honor her memory. "I want to start a foundation," he said over the most expensive salmon I'd ever seen. "One that provides grants to nonprofits, funds social programs, helps people who fall through the cracks. But I don't want it to be run by people who've never struggled. I want someone who understands what it's like to choose between paying rent or buying groceries. Someone who knows what real people need because they've lived it." "And you think that's me?" I asked, because surely this was a dream. "You met me once. I met you once, and you gave away food you probably needed yourself," he said. "Then I researched you and found someone with a degree in exactly the field I need, who's been stuck in a job that wastes her potential because the system is broken. Tell me I'm wrong." He wasn't wrong. I'd applied to 73 social work positions after graduation. 73. I'd gotten 2 interviews and 0 offers. Everyone wanted experience, but no one wanted to give you experience. So I'd taken the call center job to pay my loans and kept telling myself it was temporary. 3 years later, I was still there, watching my degree collect dust while I helped people reset passwords. "What are you offering?" I asked carefully. "Director of Community Outreach for the Ashford Foundation," he said. "Salary of $95,000 to start, full benefits, budget to build your own team." Your job would be to figure out where the money should go and how to make sure it actually helps people. I need someone who won't be impressed by fancy presentations from organizations that spend more on galas than programs. I need someone real. My hands were shaking. $95,000. I was making $32,000 at the call center. This was more than double. This was life-changing. This was suspicious. Why me? I asked again. Really? There have to be thousands of qualified people. Because yesterday, you proved you have the most important qualification, Robert said. Empathy. You can teach someone about nonprofit management, about grant writing, about program evaluation, but you can't teach someone to see a stranger as a human being worth helping. You already have that. I wanted to cry. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to ask if I was being punked. This is insane. Is that a no? That's a, I need to process this before I make any decisions, I said. You're offering me my dream job based on one interaction. That doesn't happen in real life. It does when someone with resources decides to invest in someone with heart, Robert said. I'm not offering this because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering it because I think you're the right person for the job. But I understand if you need time to think about it. He slid a business card across the table. My personal number. Call me when you've decided. And Emily, whether you take the job or not, thank you again for reminding me why any of this matters. I took the card with numb fingers. The rest of dinner passed in a blur. He told me about his wife, about their plans to make a difference that got cut short. I told him about my own struggles, about feeling like I was drowning while everyone else seemed to have their shit together. By the time the limo dropped me back at my apartment, it was like we'd known each other for years, instead of hours. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, turning the business card over and over in my hands. Part of me was convinced I'd imagined the whole thing. The other part was terrified it was real, because what if I said yes and screwed it up? What if I wasn't actually good enough? But then I thought about spending another 3 years at that call center. Another 3 years watching my dreams shrivel while I explained to angry people that their internet was slow because they had too many browser tabs open. Another 3 years eating half a sandwich for lunch because that's all I could afford. I picked up my phone at 2 a.m. and typed out a text. I'm in. When do I start? The response came immediately. Monday. Welcome to the team, Emily. Would you have had the courage to say yes to something that seemed too good to be true? Let me know in the comments, because taking that leap changed everything for me. The first 3 months were overwhelming. Robert wasn't kidding about building my own team. He gave me the budget to hire 5 people, and together we started identifying organizations that needed funding. Not the big, flashy charities that spent millions on marketing, but the small community groups doing real work. The food pantry that stayed open late for third-shift workers. The organization that provided free legal help to tenants fighting slumlords. The program that gave job training to formerly incarcerated people. I got to use my degree. More than that, I got to make a real difference. We gave out our first round of grants 4 months in. $2 million distributed to 37 organizations. I cried reading some of the thank you letters. These weren't groups used to getting help. They were used to begging and scraping and being told to do more with less. Robert came to every site visit with me, and I watched him transform too. He was still grieving. You could see it in quiet moments, but he was engaged again. Alive. At one point, visiting a youth center we'd just funded, he pulled me aside. Do you know what my wife would say if she could see this? He asked. What? That it took me long enough? He smiled, and it was sad but genuine. She always said I was too focused on the bottom line. That money was just a tool, and I was using it wrong. She would have loved you, Emily. You're doing what she always wanted to do but never got the time for. I'm doing it because you gave me the chance, I said. Because you decided a sandwich was worth something. No, he said firmly. I decided you were worth something. The sandwich was just how I found you. That moment, standing in a youth center in South Chicago, watching kids who looked like I used to look get help they desperately needed, that's when I realized what had really happened. It wasn't about the lunch. It wasn't even about the job. It was about 2 people meeting at exactly the right moment. when both needed to remember that good things could still happen. That kindness mattered, that we weren't alone in trying to make things better. A year later, we distributed $15 million and helped over 200 organizations. I had a team of 12, an office with my name on the door, and an apartment where the heat actually worked. I'd paid off my student loans. I'd bought a car that didn't make scary noises. I was living a life I'd never imagined possible. But the best part? The day we opened the Caroline Ashford Center for Social Services, named after Robert's wife. A full-service community center offering everything from job training to mental health counseling to legal aid. All free. All focused on helping people who'd been forgotten by everyone else. Robert gave the dedication speech, and he cried. So did I. So did most of the people there, because they understood what it meant to finally be seen, to finally matter to someone. None of this exists without you, Robert told me afterward. You know that, right? I had the money, but you had the vision. You had the heart to know where it needed to go. We both needed each other, I said. You needed someone to remind you why it mattered. I needed someone to believe I could do it. He nodded. It's funny how life works. How one small act of kindness can ripple out into something bigger than either person imagined. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear that good things can still happen. That kindness comes back around. And don't forget to subscribe because we all need reminders that hope is real. Looking back now, I still can't quite believe it happened. Some days I walk into my office, or I visit one of our funded programs, or I see the difference we're making in real people's lives, and I have to pinch myself. This is my life. This is real. People ask me all the time what the lesson is, what they should take away from my story. And here's what I tell them. Kindness is never wasted. That sandwich cost me $5 and an afternoon of being hungry, but it changed 2 lives completely. It pulled Robert back from the edge and gave him purpose again. It pulled me out of a dead-end job and into work that actually matters. But more than that, it proved something I'd been starting to doubt, that good people still exist, that generosity gets rewarded sometimes, that the universe doesn't always crush you for trying to help. I'm not going to lie and say everything's perfect now. I still have hard days. The work is exhausting sometimes, and there's so much need that we can never help everyone. Robert still has moments where the grief hits him hard, where I can see him thinking about his wife and everything they lost. The world is still broken in so many ways, but we're fixing little pieces of it. One grant at a time, one family helped, one person given a second chance they thought they'd never get. And it all started because I gave my lunch to a homeless man on a random Tuesday. He came back the next day in a black limousine, and I learned something I'll never forget. You never know when a small act of kindness will change everything. You never know who you're really helping, or who might end up helping you. Last week, we gave a grant to a food bank. While I was there, I watched a volunteer hand a bag of groceries to a mom with 3 kids. The woman started crying, and the volunteer hugged her and said, "We've all been there. You're not alone." I thought about that curb on State Street, about turkey sandwiches and bruised apples, about blue eyes and a dirty face, and black limousines appearing out of nowhere, about how broken I felt back then, and how whole I feel now. The volunteer noticed me watching and smiled. Stories like this make it all worth it, don't they? Yeah, I said, smiling back. They really do. That's the thing about kindness. It's contagious. Robert's kindness toward me made me want to be kinder. The people we help go on to help others. It spreads like wildfire if you let it, burning away some of the darkness that makes everything feel hopeless. I still see homeless people on my way to work. Sometimes I stop and give them food or coffee or just a moment of conversation. Not because I think they're all secretly millionaires. I'm not stupid. But because they're human beings and they deserve to be treated like it. Because I remember what it felt like to struggle. And because I know, now more than ever, that small gestures matter more than we realize. Robert told me recently that he's planning to retire in a few years and hand the foundation over to me completely. "You don't need me anymore," he said. "You never really did. You just needed someone to open the door." Maybe that's true, but I think we both needed each other. We both needed to be reminded that life isn't just about surviving. It's about connecting. It's about seeing each other. It's about choosing, every single day, to be a little bit kinder than we have to be. So here's my challenge to you. If you've made it this far, do one kind thing today. Buy someone's coffee. Let someone merge in traffic without getting mad about it. Smile at a stranger. Give someone your lunch if they need it more than you do. You never know what might happen. You never know whose life you might change, or how they might change yours. Because sometimes, when you give your lunch to a homeless man, he comes back the next day in a black limousine. And sometimes, that changes absolutely everything. Thank you for listening to my story. If it meant something to you, leave a comment and tell me about a time when someone's kindness changed your life. I read every single one, and they remind me why this work matters. Subscribe to hear more stories like this, because we all need to remember that hope is real, kindness matters, and sometimes, just sometimes, life surprises you in the best possible way. 3 years have passed since that Tuesday that changed everything. The Ashford Foundation now operates in 12 cities across America. We've helped over 1,500 organizations and touched the lives of more than 500,000 people. But numbers don't tell the real story. The real story is Maria, a single mom who got job training through our program and now manages her own catering business. It's Derek, who came out of prison with nothing and now mentors other formerly incarcerated people trying to rebuild their lives. It's the hundreds of families who didn't get evicted because we funded legal aid programs. It's the kids who have a safe place to go after school. It's the seniors who aren't choosing between medicine and food anymore. Last month, Robert and I were invited to the White House to receive an award for our work. Standing in that room, shaking hands with the president, I kept thinking about that curb on State Street, about how close I'd come to walking past him that day. I almost didn't stop. I was tired, I was hungry, and I had my own problems. But something made me turn around. "What are you thinking about?" Robert whispered during the ceremony. "That turkey sandwich," I said, and he laughed quietly. "Best $5 I never spent," he replied. After the ceremony, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 22, and she was nervous, twisting her hands together. "Ms. Martinez, I just wanted to say thank you. My community center got one of your grants last year. It saved us. We were about to close, and now we're thriving. You changed my neighborhood." I hugged her, and she started crying. So did I. Because that's what this is really about. Not the awards or the recognition, but the actual human beings whose lives get better because someone decided to care. Robert announced his retirement last week. He's leaving the foundation entirely in my hands, which is terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. "You've already been running it for a year," he said when I protested. "I'm just making it official." "This is your legacy now, Emily. Build it into something even bigger." But here's the thing I've learned. Legacies aren't built alone. They're built by people who choose each other, who lift each other up, who refuse to walk past someone who needs help. Robert didn't just give me a job that day, he gave me purpose. And I didn't just give him a sandwich. I gave him a reason to keep going. We both saved each other. That's how kindness works. It's never one-directional. When you help someone, you help yourself too. You remember that you matter, that your actions have weight, that you can make a difference even when you feel powerless. So here's what I want you to take from this. Your next act of kindness might change someone's entire life. It might change yours too. Don't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect opportunity. Just do something kind today, right now, for someone who needs it. Because somewhere out there, someone is sitting on a curb wondering if anyone sees them. Someone is one small gesture away from hope. Someone needs you to be the person who stops and cares. Be that person. The world needs more of us. And who knows? Maybe that homeless person you helped today will come back tomorrow in a black limousine. Or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll just remember that someone saw them as human, that someone cared. Either way, you'll have made the world a little bit better. And isn't that the whole point?